Namaskar and welcome to Diplomatic Dispatch, the show that gives you a ringside view of India's foreign relations and its diplomatic outreach. I'm your host, Vikas Swarup. This is our 50th episode, and I want to begin by thanking you, our viewers, for your encouragement and support. Over the past 50 weeks, we have covered the entire world, from Latin America to the Indo-Pacific, bringing you expert analysis of India's multifaceted engagement with partner countries, international organizations, and plurilateral groupings. In today's episode, we will take an in-depth look at India's role in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as it meets for its 22nd summit in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, with Prime Minister Modi in attendance. The SCO was preceded by the Shanghai Five, which came into existence in 1996 against the backdrop of the end of the Cold War and the breakup of the Soviet Union. It brought together Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan for a series of border demarcation and demilitarization talks with China, with the aim of ensuring stability in the border regions. Uzbekistan joined the organization in 2001, following which the Shanghai Five was renamed the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Today, the SCO has 9 members, India and Pakistan having joined in 2017, and the Samarkand summit officially admitting Iran as a full member. Other than the member states, SCO has a number of observer states and dialogue partners. It is now the largest regional organization in the world in terms of geographical coverage and population, covering 3/5 of the Eurasian continent, 44% of the human population, and 20% of the global GDP. The SCO aims to strengthen mutual trust and neighborliness among the member states by promoting their effective cooperation in politics, trade, the economy, research, technology and culture, as well as in education, energy, transport, tourism, environmental protection, and regional stability and security. There are 44 SCO working groups in existence and 14 ministerial mechanisms. The SCO has 2 permanent bodies, the SCO Secretariat based in Beijing and the Executive Committee of the Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure, RATS, based in Tashkent, which is the key institution for countering terrorism, extremism and separatism in the Eurasian region. Security cooperation is reinforced by military exercises dubbed as peace missions and counter-terrorism drills held periodically in the member states. There is also an SCO Afghanistan contact group since 2018, a consultative mechanism for developing proposals and recommendations to support a peaceful, stable and economically prosperous Afghanistan free from terrorism and extremism. The Heads of State Council is the supreme decision-making body in the SCO. It meets once a year and adopts decisions and guidelines on all important matters of the organization. The SCO Heads of Government Council also meets once a year to discuss the organization's multilateral cooperation strategy and approve the priority areas and the budget. India hosted the SCO Heads of Government Council on November 30th, 2020 in virtual mode and proposed 3 new pillars of cooperation: startups and innovation, science and technology, and traditional medicine. India will now take over the SCO presidency from Uzbekistan for a year till September 2023. In this capacity, India will also host the next SCO Heads of State Summit. To learn more about the SCO and India's approach to this important grouping, I am joined by 2 outstanding experts. Ambassador Skand Ranjan Tayal is a veteran diplomat who served as India's Consul General in Johannesburg and Houston, and as ambassador to Uzbekistan and South Korea. Dr. Meena was formerly with the IDSA and is presently head West and Central Asia Center, Tillotoma Foundation. She has authored numerous publications on India-Central Asia relations, the SCO, regional connectivity, and global issues. A very warm welcome to both of you to the 50th episode of Diplomatic Dispatch. Let me begin with you, Dr. Roy. Now, this is the first in-person summit of the SCO in the last 3 years, since the previous two summits were held in virtual mode. How significant is the Samarkand summit, and what are the new challenges that the SCO is facing?
Well, I think the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, itself is drawing a major attention, not only from the regional countries, but there is a global attention to it. That's the first thing. Second, this particular summit is important because it is happening in Uzbekistan. And today, if we look at the new foreign policy of the Uzbekistan, Shaukat Mirziyoyev, the present president, I would say the initiative taken by him has really changed the region in many ways, whether we're talking about economic integration, whether we're talking about cooperation amongst the Central Asian countries. There's a paradigm shift. And I would add to it the new equation that, is evolving, and, you could see the force with which India-Uzbekistan relations have developed over the last few years. So from that point of view, and now let me come to the other factors, which actually make this summit very important. There's a new global and the regional order which is unfolding today. We have the Ukrainian crisis and its impact on the entire world. And the third aspect, the new narrative that we are hearing, is the new economic order. That is also a very, very significant development which the SCO countries, will have to deal with. Are we going to have an anti-dollar, pro-dollar and anti-dollar movement in future? So the entire geostrategic and the geo-economic, developments in and around are drawing the attention to this organization and what is going to happen. You have 3 nuclear weapon states like Russia, India, China, 4 rather, Pakistan. And also an organization where you don't have West. So I think these are, very, very important indicators. And let's not forget the food security and the new energy game which is unfolding. So these are few developments which are drawing our attention to the present SCO summit. It is a multilateral organization, right? And it is also, our foreign minister said it is a multipolar organization. So we have various poles. This organization is basically focused on Central Asia. You see, the smaller states have always felt that their security concerns have not been addressed. Now, to what extent those are going to be addressed, and how, the major actors who are there as part of the full members, and the expansion, if you see to it, Iran becomes a new member. Then you have Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Qatar, getting a dialogue partner.
Even UAE wanting to join.
UAE wanting to join. So you are going to see a major shift in terms of the organizational structure in that sense, with the involvement of that many actors in it, and all very, very important. The collective effort. Now that's going to be a very, very challenging task for the SCO member states. Is it just going to be an organization which provides a platform for discussion and debate, or are we going to see a concrete, projects on connectivity, on medical, on energy? If we look at security, Afghanistan is central to the problems today that we are concerned with. The new jihadi groups or the existing ones, the SCO member state might be, having a common problem, agreeing that this is the problem, but do they have a common approach and a strategy to deal with it? I think this is going to be a future challenge for it.
Ambassador Tayal, now India became a SCO observer in 2005 and had to wait for 12 years before it was admitted as a full member in 2017. So what value does India bring to the SCO, and what is the SCO's value for India?
First, SCO's value to India. It is called Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It has headquarters in Beijing, but the core of its work, focus of its activities is Central Asia. And Central Asia is in our extended neighborhood. Distance as the crow flies between Srinagar and Tajikistan is about 600 kilometers. And if you look back in history, there have been civilizational connections, cultural connections. Buddhism has been, you go to Termez and you see the entire Buddhist sites in Tajikistan, all that is part of history. So it was very much part of Indian civilizational outreach and footprint. Now if we come to the present, these 5 Central Asian countries have Muslim majority populations, but they are very secular. And if you look at the entire membership organization, Islamic Conference, etc., there are very few Muslim majority countries which are not Islamic republics. So we have a connection there. And because of the Soviet legacy, Indians are very popular, Indian films are very popular, and we are very well recognized and respected. And coming from a strategic point of view also, again we see that there have been invasions from that side towards India. So we have to make sure that Central Asia of today and tomorrow remains peaceful. Of course, there have been terrorist instances in Uzbekistan, in Tajikistan, and this is a common fight. So that is another commonality. Then connectivity, of course, we want Central Asia to be connected with South Asia and towards India. We have Chabahar, India, North-South transport corridor, etc. So again, we want the support of the Central Asian countries and of course of Russia and China for that. Then what do the the SCO members see in India when they want to have us as a member? If you go back 2005 and then when we were observers, perhaps who were our main champions to get in SCO? Russia and Central Asian Republics, particularly Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. Perhaps at that moment in time, Russia wanted India as a kind of a balancer for China, and it might have changed slightly in the present context, but the India-Russia friendship and all that remains. And the Central Asian republics want to maintain their strategic autonomy. They do not want to be again parts of any great game. They are hemmed in on two sides by two major powers with global interests, and they want to have an India there which can try to help them in safeguarding their own interests.
Dr. Roy, now Iran's membership of the SCO represents the first expansion of the SCO since India and Pakistan were admitted in 2017. I am told this is the first time that Iran has officially joined an international body since the 1979 revolution. So how will Iran's membership impact the SCO?
Well, let's look at Iran. Iran is a very special, a unique country. I mean, if I have to look at it, having interacted with all of them, it has many strengths and it keeps changing, adapting to the new situation. So if we look at the foreign policy, the foreign policy, I mean, you talked about the revolution, post-revolution look neither east nor west. It has moved to look to the east. And the SCO, membership is something which actually, provides them coming out of that isolationism which was imposed on them. So today, if we look at the geographical positioning of Iran and the Central Asian republics, then Iran offers basically, two areas. One is the connectivity and the second is the energy dimension of it and the trade. So there are many, some 500 plus, types of goods that they can, send to Eurasia if as and when they actually become. It takes 2 years probably, to fulfill all the formalities and so it will take that much of time. But for now, in a situation when Iran, Russia, China, they are in one bracket, anti-US, in that I would say, no, but there are undercurrents to that sense. And Iran is very openly, talking about how it's been victimized by the United States. So in this situation, Iran definitely wants to engage with the Central Asian republics, and the SCO gives that prestige and, recognition of Iran where they don't need United States or the West to be part of it. But it would be too early to say that, it's actually things are going to fall in place for Iran very soon. And, yes, on connectivity, if we look at it, Iran is the gateway to Central Asia and beyond, That is one potential which is being, talked about. And there are major initiatives, whether we talk about INSTC, Chabahar. But from Iran's point of view, I think, and the Central Asians, have been very careful when it comes to controversial issues. So as a neighbor, I think, on energy and the connectivity, there is much they can bring to the Eurasian continent. And, we will have to see as to how things unfold in future.
Now, the SCO was initially branded by the US as a hostile bloc, led by China and Russia to challenge its post-Cold War global supremacy. Of course, the entry of India would have allayed some of those concerns. But given that the Russia-China no-limits partnership has deepened considerably in the aftermath of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, is there a danger of the SCO becoming an anti-West grouping?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. The focus of SCO and all its activities is Central Asia. We must keep that in mind. Yes, at present, both Russia and China are facing some difficulties with the West, sanctions, etc. Iran is the new entrant which has very openly hostile intent towards America, if not entire West. But the 5 Central Asian republics, again I will say, they do not want to be part of any great game. They want to make sure that the region remains free of any kind of great power rivalry. There is another one factor that United States seems to be retreating from Central Asia. That is also a fact. Earlier it was very active. But particularly after their departure from Afghanistan, this is very much on their back burner, on their own thinking. They are concentrating on Europe or Indo-Pacific. But be that as it may, if we look at how the Central Asian Republics 5 voted in the UNGA on the resolution which deplored Russian aggression in Ukraine, 3 abstained, and Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan left the room.
Right.
So that shows their independence. India also abstained.
Correct.
So they are practically standing with India in these matters. So I'll say yes, 3 members are openly anti-West: Iran, China, and Russia. But there are 6 other members. If we
who will moderate? Who will moderate? Now, Dr. Roy, it has been suggested that China and Russia have competitive interest in the SCO, with China more interested in trade and development, and Russia focus more on energy and security. Do you agree with this assessment?
In the international relations, no bilateral relations are permanent in that sense. They change. But the fact remains that there is competition between Russia and China when we talk about the Eurasian region today. Even in the sector of energy, let us see, the China, I would say in many ways has won the game, And Russia is financially, economically also very weak. So for now, I don't think Russia has an option. So they are cooperating while the undercurrents remain. And that precisely is the reason, you see the other players who are joining SCO. So Russia wants countries like India, and unfortunately Mongolia is not yet a full member, but
they want
would
Belarus.
Very much, they got Belarus. They are getting now the Iranians there, despite the fact that the Iran has 25 years agreement with China and also the strategic partnership with Russia. So there are competing elements. There's no doubt. But I think, for now, Russia, China, Iran are going to work together so long as there is a pressure from the West on these 3 countries.
Let's now turn to the SCO's report card. Now, Ambassador Tayal, the SCO was created to combat the 3 evils of terrorism, extremism, and separatism. How successful has it been in that endeavor?
I would say that SCO has a kind of quasi-defense organization, because we have military exercises. We had in Orenburg last year. We will have anti-terrorist exercises in Manesar this year. But the focus has been on terrorism. There is a regional anti-terrorism structure in Tashkent, and India is now fully participating in that. We have a person stationed there. But I would say the report is mixed. It is either a clearinghouse of information, there is no real-time information which is really exchanged, and Pakistan continues to harbor terrorism, and another member, China, continues to shield them in United Nations Security Council list, etc. So the report card is mixed there, but we should keep on feeding information there against LET, against Hizbul Mujahideen, and try to expose whatever we can the involvement of Pakistan and the groups which are in Afghanistan, because it will help in putting some kind of a moral pressure on Pakistan to contain those forces. But I would say report card would be mixed.
Now, Dr. Roy, Prime Minister Modi has spoken of the need to enhance connectivity in the region as the key to boosting trade and investment, but without infringing on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of member nations. I think a reference to the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. India has been pushing for the use of the International North-South Transport Corridor and the Chabahar port, while China has been trying to push its Belt and Road narrative in Central Asia. Can the SCO become a viable forum for trans-Eurasian connectivity?
Well, in terms of potential, my answer would be yes. But in terms of practically putting things, moving, there has to be coordination, cooperation between the major SCO countries. I would say mainly Russia, Iran, and Central Asian republics are working together, whether we are talking about INSTC or Chabahar or many other. But when we look at China, as you said, their interests are very different. And I would say, here there have been more either bilateral or trilateral or quadrilateral, cooperation which have delivered. Let's look at Uzbekistan, Iran, India. That's a trilateral. We also have India, Afghanistan, Iran, So my own probably assessment would be that the minilateral or trilateral or bilateral initiatives can be pulled in subsequently, and if there is an agreement, I do feel SCO can be a good platform.
Ambassador Tayal, what has been the progress by the SCO on catalyzing trade and investment in the region?
Not much. If we look at Dushanbe declaration of last year, trade and investment at 6 paras in a 162 para declaration. There are two things, that Russia has about $35 billion trade with Central Asian countries, and China has about 26 billion. So perhaps there is some kind of a silent competition going on there between these two major neighboring countries. And there was in the declaration talk about WTO and there should be free commerce, etc. But that was more because the sanctions had been imposed on Russia and China, so they were trying to safeguard that. There was talk of e-commerce, and that is where we see possibility. Prime Minister Modi has been talking about digital highway, and there are very tangible project could be that just like for English speaking world, Indian companies provide IT enabled services. For Russian market, Indian companies provided the services from Tashkent or Dushanbe in Russian. And if there is an optical fiber network all over CAR, that could work. So if SCO can work towards that kind of a digital highway within CAR, get it linked with India, etc., it can be win-win for both the countries.
Dr. Roy, now 1 year after the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, its relations with its neighbors remain tepid. Women and girls have lost the gains made over the last 2 decades, and the country's humanitarian crisis continues to spiral. Can the SCO contact group on Afghanistan help improve the situation?
Well, I think Afghanistan is a quagmire that, we need to keep in mind. I don't think there's going to be a solution as such, but I think how best we can manage the situation. And in that direction, I would say Uzbekistan has taken many initiatives, organizing conference on Afghanistan, on trade and connectivity, bringing in, the factor of Afghanistan. So from that point of view, I think there has been a debate and discussion, but in real terms, will there be a real change in Afghanistan that the SCO countries can make? Will depend on how the SCO member countries push this, problem in future, number one. Number two, India and Uzbekistan both have, I'm not saying the other member states don't have, but Uzbekistan has been extremely dynamic, as I said, and so is India. So next, summit meeting is going to be in India. And I think Afghanistan is a core probably issue when we talk about the security situation or new security challenges in terms of the jihadis who are, building their bases in and around. And then, to push certain initiatives which would benefit the people of Afghanistan. That is the humanitarian dimension of it, the connectivity dimension of it. And these are some sectors where, I think the SCO can pool in energy and synergy together and address it.
Ambassador Tayal, now as India takes over the presidency of the SCO, what should be its strategy, for re-energizing the SCO going forward?
One, it should keep on focusing on terrorism and how religious fundamentalism does not spread in this entire region. On that, more work could be done. Second, all the members of SCO have some level of engagement with Afghanistan, as Dr. Singh also said. So, what will be the terms of engagement? And President Shaukat Mirziyoyev has very publicly been advocating this railway line. So, Mazar-e-Sharif, this Termez, Mazar-e-Sharif, Kabul, Peshawar, and this could happen. So, what will be our approach, how we safeguard our interests, and third, whether we can promote this digital highway between all the members of SCO. I think that could be the focus areas.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Tayal and Dr. Meena Singh Roy, for taking our viewers through the SCO's journey so far and its future prospects. Prime Minister Modi's presence at the Samarkand summit shows the importance India attaches to the SCO as a forum for outreach to the Eurasian region, which, as Ambassador Tayal said, is part of India's extended neighborhood and figures prominently in India's security architecture. It is hoped that India will leverage its presidency of the SCO to address its security concerns in the region while building a cooperative framework to support increased trade, connectivity, and people-to-people contacts. That is all in this edition of Diplomatic Dispatch. Till we meet again next week, take care and goodbye.